Imagine waking up every day knowing the person you love most sees you as nothing. A burden, a failure, invisible. This is the story of a woman who turned her pain into power, her silence into a scream that shook the world. But what happens when the one who broke her realizes too late that she was the diamond he treated like dust? Stay with us, because this journey is filled with heartbreak, betrayal, and a comeback so epic it'll leave you speechless. Hit that subscribe button and let's dive into The Silent Queen, a story that'll make you laugh, cry, and cheer until the very last second. In the glittering city of Lagos, where skyscrapers kissed the sky and wealth was worn like a badge, lived a woman named Linda. To the world, she was just a housewife, her days filled with the quiet rhythm of domestic life. But to her husband, David, she was a shadow, a woman whose love he trampled and whose worth he dismissed. David was a titan in the oil industry, his suits tailored to perfection, his bank account a fortress of pride. His words, however, were sharper than any blade, cutting Linda down with every chance he got. Lazy, he'd sneer as she ironed his shirts at dawn. Useless, he'd mutter when she served him dinner. To him, Linda's role as a full-time mother to their daughters, Zara and Emily, was a job for the week. He didn't see the hours she spent helping them with homework, braiding their hair, or teaching them to dream big. He didn't notice the home she held together while he chased status. To David, Linda was a relic of his past, a village girl he saved from poverty, a story he loved to tell anyone who'd listen. Linda's mornings began at 4 a.m. She'd rise in the dark, the house still cloaked in silence, to cook, clean, and prepare her family for the day. Her hands moved with precision, but her heart ached with every insult David hurled. Yet, she never let her daughters see her pain. "You are enough," she'd whisper to them as they slept, her voice trembling with a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. One humid Saturday evening, David invited his elite friends over for drinks. Their laughter filled the house, their expensive cologne lingering like a cloud of arrogance. Linda greeted them with a warm smile, her grace a stark contrast to their flashy demeanor. She served drinks and retreated to the kitchen, her usual refuge. But as she prepared a tray of suya, David's voice boomed through the house. "I plucked her from the streets, barefoot and selling mangoes," he bragged, his friends erupting in laughter. "I should get a medal for charity." Linda's grip tightened on the tray, her knuckles paling. She stepped into the living room, her heart pounding, and as she placed the tray down, her elbow knocked over a glass of red wine. It splashed across the pristine white shirt of one guest, Tund, a smug banker with a Rolex that gleamed like his ego. The room froze. David's eyes blazed. "You clumsy village idiot," he barked, his voice slicing through her. "Can't you do anything right? Stay in the kitchen where you belong." His friends chuckled nervously, but Tund waved it off. "It's just wine," he said, his tone kinder than David's. But the damage was done. Linda stood there, wine dripping from her fingers, her dignity pooling on the floor like the spilled drink. As she retreated to the kitchen, her eyes burned with unshed tears. She sat on a stool, staring at the wall, her husband's words echoing, "Village idiot." But something inside her stirred, a spark, a whisper of defiance. What if she wasn't what he said she was? What if she could prove him wrong? The camera zooms in on her trembling hands, then cuts to black with the text. She was about to change everything. That night, after David's snores filled the house and the guests had left, Linda tiptoed into her daughter's room. Zara and Emily slept peacefully, their small faces glowing in the moonlight. She kissed their foreheads, whispering, "I'll make you proud, my loves." Then, she did something she hadn't done in years. She picked up her phone and typed how to start a business with nothing. Linda wasn't just searching for a business idea. She was searching for herself. Years of insults had buried her dreams. But that night, a forgotten gift, a vibrant Ankara fabric tucked away in a dusty box, became her lifeline. She pulled it out, her fingers tracing the bold patterns, memories of her late mother's sewing lessons flooding back. Under the dim glow of a lantern, Linda threaded a needle and began to sew. The house was silent except for the soft snores of David, a man who thought he owned her world. She stitched a simple tote bag, her hand steady despite the ache in her heart. When she finished, she held it up, a small smile breaking through her pain. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. The next morning, at the bustling Oshodi market, Linda slung the bag over her shoulder. A woman, Mama Tolu, stopped her. "Where did you get that bag?" she asked, eyes wide. "I made it," Linda replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Mama Tolu's face lit up. "Make me 3. I'll pay you now." Linda's heart raced as she pocketed her first 5,000 naira. It wasn't much, but it was everything. A seed of hope planted in the cracks of her broken spirit. Linda didn't tell David. She opened a secret digital wallet, naming it Freedom Fund. Every night, while he slept, she sewed. Her bags grew more intricate, her confidence blossoming with each stitch. Word spread in the market, and soon, strangers were calling her the bag lady. David, oblivious, continued his taunts, calling her poor and ambitionless. But Linda was no longer just a housewife. She was a silent architect of her own destiny. One afternoon, as she haggled for fabric in the market, Linda froze. There, in his sleek Mercedes, was David, laughing with a woman in the passenger seat. Her designer dress and polished nails screamed wealth. Linda's heart sank, but she followed them, her feet moving before her mind could catch up. They pulled into a hotel, and when she confronted David, his response was a slap to her soul. "Look at her," he sneered, gesturing to the woman. "She earns more in a month than you'll see in a lifetime. You smell like the market. Linda, are we even married?" The words hit like a thunderbolt. Linda stood frozen, the woman smirking beside David. "Are we even married?" The question echoed, planting a seed of doubt she couldn't shake. Linda walked away, her chest burning with a fire she'd never felt before. Not sadness, not fear, but rage. She vowed to succeed, not just for herself, but to silence David forever. The screen fades to black with her voiceover. "He thought he broke me. He had no idea what was coming." Linda's days became a blur of purpose. She woke at 4 a.m., cared for her daughters, and sewed until her fingers bled. Her bags evolved. Tote bags became handbags, then clutches with intricate beadwork. The market buzzed with her name, and her Freedom Fund grew to 50,000 naira, then 100,000. She opened an Instagram account under her mother's name, Ife Creations, and posted her designs. Within days, orders flooded in. Linda's joy was tempered by secrecy. She hid her success from David, fearing his mockery would crush her fragile confidence. But one rainy afternoon, her world tilted. Returning home, she found her precious fabrics soaked, tossed outside by David. "Stop littering my house with these rags," he laughed. "If you want to sew, learn from a real tailor." Linda's anger boiled, but she didn't cry. Instead, she uploaded her best bags to Instagram. Within 48 hours, a boutique owner ordered 50 bags for 150,000 naira. Linda's heart soared. She'd never held such money. She rented a small shop in secret, hired 2 assistants, and watched her account balance climb to 6 figures. David began to notice changes: new fabrics, frequent phone calls, Linda's quiet confidence. "Who's funding you?" he demanded one evening, his voice laced with suspicion. "Are you selling yourself?" Linda smiled, unfazed. "Just keeping busy," she said, her calm demeanor infuriating him. His laughter, once a weapon, now bounced off her like rain on a roof. Then came the day that changed everything. A knock on the door revealed Mrs. Aisha Bello, a poised woman in her 50s, owner of Chic Vogue, a high-end fashion chain. "I saw your bags online," she said. "I want 500 pieces a month. I'll pay up front." Linda's hands shook as she signed her first major contract, worth 1.5 million naira. Alone in a restaurant, celebrating with a glass of juice, she met Toby, a kind-eyed entrepreneur who listened to her story with awe. "You're unstoppable," he said, handing her his card. "Call me if you need a friend." Linda returned home to find David with another woman, her bags packed in a corner. "We were never married," he said coldly. "You have 1 week to leave." The screen freezes on Linda's face, shock, betrayal, and a glimmer of defiance. Text appears. What secret was David hiding? And how would Linda turn the tables? Linda's world shattered. Never married? The words clawed at her, but David's cruelty revealed a darker truth. Years ago, he'd staged a fake wedding, hiring actors to pose as his family and a pastor to deceive her. Linda had given him her youth, her love, her daughters, only to learn it was all a lie. She stood in the doorway, Zara and Emily clinging to her, their eyes wide with confusion. David moved them to the guest room, sneering, "Go live under a bridge for all I care." But Linda didn't break. She picked up her phone and called the landlord, paying 2 million naira for the flat next door. David's jaw dropped as she moved out with her daughters, her head held high. David's world began to unravel. He spied on Linda, obsessed with her newfound confidence. He confronted a delivery man, mistaking him for her sponsor, only to learn he was a grateful employee of Ife Creations. On Instagram, David discovered Linda's empire. 200,000 followers, celebrity endorsements, and viral videos of her sharing her story of resilience. The village idiot was now a star. David's obsession grew. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. His new girlfriend left, unable to compete with his fixation on Linda. One morning, he marched to her flat to beg for forgiveness, only to find Toby proposing to her. "She's my wife," David roared, throwing a punch at Toby. Linda watched, silent, as he stormed out, her daughters trembling beside her. The final blow came at work. David arrived to find Toby in his boss's office, the boss's son. "Meet Toby, my fiancé's hero," his boss said, oblivious to the connection. David's assault on Toby led to his suspension, then his firing. His empire crumbled, job, status, pride gone. Linda, now a celebrated designer, pulled up in a branded SUV, her daughters laughing beside her. David watched from his empty house, tears streaming down his face. The screen fades with his voiceover. "I lost everything because I couldn't see her worth." Text appears. But was this the end for David? Linda's life had transformed into something she once thought impossible. Ife Creations wasn't just a business, it was a movement. Her shop in the heart of Lagos buzzed with activity, its shelves lined with vibrant handbags, clutches, and totes that told stories of resilience in every stitch. Her Instagram account, now boasting 500,000 followers, was a gallery of her designs, interspersed with videos of her speaking at women's empowerment events. "Your worth isn't in what others say about you," she'd say, her voice steady but warm. "It's in what you build with your own hands." Her daughters, Zara and Emily, now 12 and 9, thrived in their new school, a private academy Linda had chosen for its focus on creativity and leadership. She'd watched them from the school gates, their laughter a melody that healed the scars David had left. But success didn't erase the past. Linda still carried the weight of his betrayal. The fake marriage, the years of insults, the lie that had defined her life. Yet, every order, every contract, every smile from a customer was a brick in the throne she was building. Linda's mornings no longer began at 4 a.m. out of duty, but out of purpose. She'd wake to messages from women across Nigeria, market traders, single mothers, students who saw her as a beacon. One message read, "You made me believe I can start over. Thank you, Bad Queen." Linda would read these alone, tears welling, knowing her pain had become someone else's hope. One afternoon, as she reviewed designs in her shop, Mrs. Aisha Bello, her first major client, burst through the door, her red heels clicking with urgency. "Linda, I have news," she said, her eyes sparkling. "Chic Vogue wants a partner with Ife Creations for a global launch. Your bags in Paris, New York, Dubai." Linda's breath caught. A global launch? She'd come from sewing on a cold floor to this. But Aisha's next words carried a challenge. "They want 2,000 pieces in 3 months. Can you do it?" Linda hesitated. Her team of 5 was talented but small, and scaling up so quickly meant hiring more staff, upgrading equipment, and navigating international logistics, things she'd never done. But the fire in her chest, the same one ignited by David's cruelty, burned brighter than her doubts. "I'll do it," she said, signing the contract with a steady hand. As Aisha left, Linda's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You think you've won? Watch your back." The screen fades to black with the text. Who was threatening Linda's empire? Across town, David's life was a shadow of its former glory. His once pristine suits hung unworn in a closet, his company car repossessed, his office replaced by a bare apartment that echoed with silence. After his firing for assaulting Toby, the boss's son, whispers followed him everywhere. Colleagues who once flattered him now avoided his calls. His new girlfriend, Sandra, had left weeks ago, tired of his obsession with Linda. "You're chasing a ghost," she'd snapped before slamming the door. David's days were spent scrolling through Ife Creations' Instagram, each post a dagger to his pride. He saw Linda at fashion shows, her smile radiant beside celebrities and designers. He saw Zara and Emily in her videos, their faces glowing with pride for their mother. The world celebrated the woman he called useless, and the weight of his regret was suffocating. One night, alone with a bottle of cheap whiskey, David stumbled across a video of Linda speaking at a women's conference. "I was told I was nothing," she said, her voice unwavering. "But every insult was a step toward my freedom." The crowd roared, but David's heart broke. He saw himself in her words, the villain in her story. For the first time, he didn't just regret losing her. He regretted who he'd become. Desperate to reclaim something, David turned to his daughters. He sent Zara a message. "Can we talk? I miss you." But Zara, wise beyond her 12 years, replied, "You hurt Mommy. Why should we trust you?" Her words cut deeper than any insult he'd hurled at Linda. He tried Emily, leaving voicemails filled with apologies, but she didn't respond. Linda had taught them strength, and they chose her peace over his chaos. Then, a new low, David received a court summons. Linda had filed for custody of Zara and Emily, citing his emotional abuse and the fake marriage. The summons included a restraining order, barring him from contacting her directly. Panic set in. He lost his job, his status, his girlfriend, and now his daughters were slipping away. Driven by desperation, David did something unthinkable. He sent the anonymous text to Linda, hoping to scare her into slowing down. It wasn't a plan, just a fleeting act of spite from a man drowning in his own failures. But the text would set off a chain of events he couldn't control. The screen flashes with his trembling hands hitting send, followed by the text. Was David about to destroy himself completely? Linda tried to dismiss the threatening text, but it lingered like a storm cloud. She confided in Toby, who'd become her rock, not a savior, but a partner who saw her as an equal. "You're unstoppable, Linda," he said, his eyes warm. "But we need to be careful. Let's hire security for the shop and trace that number." Toby's calm strength steadied her, and she nodded, determined not to let fear derail her. At the shop, Linda threw herself into the global order. She hired 10 more women, many from backgrounds like hers, single mothers, survivors of abuse, dreamers with no resources. She trained them herself, her hands guiding theirs as they stitched. "You're not just making bags," she told them. "You're building futures." The shop became a sanctuary, filled with laughter, music, and the hum of sewing machines. But the threat wasn't just a text. One evening, as Linda locked up, she found a note slipped under the door. "You'll fall, bag queen." Her heart raced, but she didn't tell her team. She didn't want to scare them. Instead, she installed cameras and hired a private investigator recommended by Toby. The investigator, a sharp-eyed woman named Funme, traced the text to a burner phone, but the note's handwriting matched samples from David's old office documents. Linda sat alone in her new home, a modest but beautiful house she'd bought with her earnings. Photos of Zara and Emily adorned the walls, their smiles a reminder of why she kept going. But the notes and text stirred old fears, David's voice calling her worthless, his shadow looming over her success. She clutched Toby's card, now a talisman of hope, and whispered, "I won't let him win again." The next morning, Linda arrived at her shop to find it vandalized. Fabrics slashed, bags torn, the word failure spray painted on the wall. She stood frozen, her team gathering around her, their faces mirroring her shock. The camera zooms in on her clenched fists, then cuts to black with the text. Would this break Linda or make her stronger? The vandalism was a blow, but Linda refused to crumble. She called her team together, their eyes wide with worry. "We faced worse," she said, her voice steady. "This shop isn't just walls and fabric, it's us. We rebuild." Inspired by her resolve, her team worked through the night, salvaging what they could and sewing new bags. Customers rallied, too, flooding Ife Creations with orders and solidarity. A local news outlet covered the story, calling Linda the unbreakable bag queen. Fummy's investigation confirmed David's involvement. The burner phone was linked to a shop he'd visited, and a neighbor saw him near Linda's shop the night of the vandalism. Armed with evidence, Linda pressed charges, but she didn't stop there. Toby helped her organize a community event, Stitch by Stitch, where women shared stories of overcoming hardship. The event raised funds to repair the shop and launch a scholarship program for abused women. At the event, Zara and Emily took the stage, unprompted. Zara, her voice trembling but strong, said, "Our mom taught us that love doesn't hurt. She's our hero." Emily held up a tiny bag she'd sewn herself, saying, "This is for you, Mommy." The crowd erupted and Linda's tears flowed, not from pain, but from pride. David, watching the live stream from his apartment, saw his daughter's love for their mother and broke down, his regret now a tidal wave. The court case was swift. David pleaded guilty to vandalism and harassment, receiving a fine and community service. The judge, moved by Linda's testimony, granted her full custody of Zara and Emily. David's final attempt at redemption came in a letter. "I was wrong, Linda. You were always enough." She read it once, then burned it, letting the ashes scatter in the wind. Months later, Linda stood on a stage in Paris, her bags displayed under glittering lights at chic Vogue's global launch. Zara and Emily sat in the front row, Toby beside them, his engagement ring sparkling on Linda's finger. Her speech was simple but powerful. "To every woman who's been told you're not enough, your silence is your strength. Build your throne stitch by stitch." The audience gave a standing ovation, and Linda felt her mother's spirit in the applause. Back in Lagos, Ife Creations opened a second shop, staffed entirely by women Linda had trained. Her scholarship program funded 10 women to start their own businesses, and her story inspired a documentary, The Bag Queen, set to air nationwide. Toby, now her fiancé, worked with her to launch a mentorship program, ensuring her legacy would endure. David, meanwhile, faded into obscurity. He took a low-paying job at a warehouse, his pride replaced by humility. He saw Linda on TV, accepting an Entrepreneur of the Year award, and whispered, "I lost a queen." His house, once a symbol of his ego, was now a museum of regret, its silence louder than his laughter ever was. Linda's new home was filled with love, Zara's paintings on the walls, Emily's laughter in the garden, Toby's quiet support. She'd built more than an empire. She'd built a life rich in peace, joy, and purpose. Every night, she'd sit with her daughters, telling them, "You are enough, and so am I." Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. Linda's story isn't just about bags. It's about what happens when you bet on yourself, even when the world bets against you. Have you ever felt invisible, like your worth was buried under someone else's words? Let Linda inspire you to rise, to create, to shine. Drop a comment below. Tell us your story or who this reminded you of. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that could change the way you see yourself. Until next time, keep building your throne.